Welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. All right, so I'm curious, what event would you choose in Jesus' ministry to experience if you could only pick one? The resurrection, that's a good one to pick, all right? I think that pretty much says it up for all of us, right? Resurrection would be pretty cool to be able to touch Jesus' body. Any others? What's that? The flipping of the tables. Oh, wow. I like that. That's good. Yep. Casting legion into a herd of pigs. Spoken like a true Iowan. Love it. Becca? Or did I say Becca? I meant Avery. My bad. Woman at the well. Would you like to be the woman? No? Okay. Just making sure. I'm just trying to figure that out. You just wanted to be like a fly on the wall with that one. Okay? Sarah? Yes, John 8. Man, it's driven you nuts for years, hasn't it? What's Jesus writing? The big question. Good. Hey, as we were talking about kind of the relationships and the natural funnel and intimacies, I want to make sure I'm very clear. It's okay and appropriate for us to have different layers of intimacy within life. Like, that's just normal. That's a normal thing. Right? Birds of a feather flock together. You're going to have people that you are just naturally clicking with and people that you don't necessarily click with, and that's all right. But within the brotherhood of faith, within the church, we are called to love like Jesus loves. So I just want to kind of level set that. But as you imagine, like, how do you determine your top 3 relationships? I think that there's something in this that we could probably draw from. And first, are those 3 people able to do things that others aren't able to do? Are they able to climb the mountains, metaphorically, in your life that others aren't able to climb? That's one of the tests that I kind of put against my 3. Are they able to go places that others aren't able to go? Can they pray intimately with you? Because if they can't pray intimately with me, they're not probably going to make the 3. Another thought or test that I put people through is, am I able to introduce these people to other close people that I'm close to in life with? How is that relationship going to go when I bring those 2 worlds together? But ultimately, I think what's going on here, at the end of the story that we're going to read in Matthew 17, Jesus is going to tell these 3, don't say anything to anyone else until after. So one of the tests that I use for my intimate 3 relationships is, can they hold confidence well? That's a big test for me. That should be a big test for you. So there are some things within the relational dynamic of this story that we could draw from, but I don't think that that's the primary point. I don't think that the story, Matthew 17, which is transfiguration, Jesus transforming into this brilliant light, I don't think it's about the intimate relationships. I think that there's something else happening here. And as I said earlier, there is, for me, a very interesting kind of dynamic to the 9 and how those 9 may have felt. But I think part of what's happening here is these men, Peter, James, and John, they were chosen specifically for something. And I think in life, I feel this tension. I feel like that there's this desire to do these great and marvelous things, especially for the kingdom, right? Because that's why else would I be put here? And in that, I came across this quote like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I just thought it was so profound. I thought it was so good. It's by Helen Keller, and if you don't know anything about Helen Keller, just Google her, or you've been living under a rock. But anyway, look at what she says. I long to accomplish a great and noble task. There's something inside of her that desired this great and noble thing, but it is my chief duty to accomplish small tasks as if they were great and noble. And I think, this tension that we're identifying with the 3 and the 9 and being selected, not being selected, kind of produces this, what happens if he doesn't choose me tension that's natural. But I think that if we lean into this story just a little bit, we'll understand why Jesus may have selected Peter, James, and John for this experience. Jesus is not playing favorites here, though. It's very important for us to understand that. First, who are Peter, James, and John in the biblical narrative? What's some of the things that they're going to do to advance the kingdom? What's the significance of the gospel? And I think what we do is we just analyze each one of them, and let's maybe go through that process. In Matthew 16, we know what Peter did. Peter said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." So I think in some ways why Peter's at least selected for this experience is because it's going to confirm his confession that we just heard. in Matthew 16. It's the same area. So Peter's going to be brought into this experience to see the transfiguration, to see Jesus transform right in front of his eyes, because it's going to validate the confirmation, or with confirmation, his confession. But also, I think Peter's been given a very specific assignment with the church. In Acts chapter 1, verse 8, it says, "You will be my witnesses in Judea, Samaria, or Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the rest of the world." And you will remember what we said in Matthew 16. Jesus is handing Peter keys to unlock the kingdom. Well, what's interesting about the Acts story is Acts chapter 1, 8, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the rest of the world. Peter has to literally be there to unlock those doors. So I think this is helpful for Peter to see, because he's going to play a critical role in the kingdom. And I would invite you to turn to 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 16, and look at what Peter says at the end of his life, how he kind of shares this experience in his writing with the church. So if you've got your Bibles, turn to 2 Peter, and if you've got your phones, you're probably going to be faster than we are, right? I should have marked this one. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 16. Look at what Peter says. "We did not follow cleverly devised myths when we made known to you the power and coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, but we were eyewitnesses," what's the word? "To his majesty, to his glory, to his Shekinah. For when he received honor and Shekinah from God the Father, the voice was borne to him by the majestic glory, 'This is my beloved Son, with whom I'm well pleased.' We ourselves heard this very voice borne from heaven, and we were with him on the holy mountain." Peter is using this experience to validate the identity of who Jesus is, because Peter saw it firsthand. There's another thing with John. If you just stop and think about what John experienced and what John's responsibility was in the kingdom, John was first at the cross when Jesus is going to die, and as Jesus is dying, one of his very last things he's going to say is he's going to look at the one who he loves, John, he's going to say, "Take care of my mom." And he looks at his mom, he says, "Mom, he's now your son." So John has this remarkable responsibility to care for Mary. And if you stop and think about the persecution of the early church, who's number one target for the church? What's the one individual that you could probably take out that's going to cripple the church the fastest? It might be Peter, it might be John, it might be James. What happens if you take out Mary and you cause torture to Mary? What do you think is going to happen to the church? And we know through history that John took not just Mary, but other Marys and Martha and Lazarus to Ephesus to protect them when persecution broke out. But the other aspect, too, that I think is really fascinating about John is that John is very critical, you ready, for the second generation believer, not the first. The first generation is going to have Peter, and they're going to have Paul, and they're going to have all the other apostles. But John, with Mary, goes into hiding, and he kind of disappears. Like, he falls off the storyline in Acts. You're like, where'd John go? Well, he's taking care of Mary. He's taking care of mom. And then when all of the first original disciples and followers of Jesus had been persecuted and fallen away, the second generation started to kind of scratch their heads and go, did we miss something? Like, are we somehow venerating this man? Like, did we get this wrong, that Jesus is God? And that's when John begins to write the gospel and the letters. And all you have to do is look at John chapter 1, verse 1. "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. The Word was God." And then do you know how the rest of this goes? This is such a beautiful storyline. In the beginning, he was with God. And then he says, there is nothing that Jesus hasn't made. Everything that has been made was made by the Word. And then he goes on to say, in him was life. And that life, you ready, was the light of all men, verse 5. And then in 1 John chapter 1, he talks about how God is light. Why is John doing that? Because he's reaffirming for the second generation who's wondering, did we miss it? No, you didn't, and I was an eyewitness to the glory of Christ. John is critical for this mission because he's going to be critical for the church in the second generation. Okay, so now if that makes sense with Peter and that makes sense with John, what about James? Like, why bring James on this mission? Well, this is probably more fascinating. James is the first of the apostles to lose his head. He's the first one to die for the identity of who Jesus is. Do you think maybe James is going to wonder and second guess in that moment when the sword's coming at his neck, did I get this right? When he experiences the glory of God on the mountain, that he's been following this man for 2.5 years and he sees Jesus transform into the deity of who God is, the Shekinah glory. See, here's what kind of dawned on me as I've been studying and preparing for this. Jesus is not selecting them because of some relational proximity or equity that he has in their life. What he's selecting them for is some specific responsibility in the kingdom. That's why these three got to go. It's not because Jesus is closer to them. That's not what this is about. But boy, it would be very dangerous for the 9 to think that somehow they're left out, isn't it? Because you know where I find myself more than others? With the company of the 9. Not the company of the 3. And I wonder, what did I do wrong? It's not about that. It's about what your role is in the kingdom. Are you content with the assignment that God has given you, with the role that he's given you? And then here's the question, what happens if you don't get all of the benefit of that story? What happens if you don't get the explanation that you so long for in your life? What happens when you don't get all the details and the reasons? Does it somehow compete for your trust and your affection and your faith with God? Why? Why is it that we need all that stuff to follow him? Isn't he God and we are not? Isn't that enough? That whatever is going to happen will happen and it's okay? That whatever his assignment in my life is going to be good for the kingdom? This is a good reminder for me in this story. So even though it's not the point, it certainly makes a point. So let's look at the rest of this story, verse 2, Matthew chapter 17. I know I haven't gotten very far, but there's some good stuff in this section. And he was transfigured. He was transformed. Some translations actually will use his appearance became something white. If you've got a King James, what's that say? Dazzling white, I think is what it says. If you're reading King James in Luke 9 and Mark 9, it says that his clothes and his face were transformed into a dazzling white. And then Luke's going to go on to say that there isn't a launderer in the world, there isn't somebody in the world who could bleach his clothes to make it as white as we saw. His face shone, his clothes were brilliant, and he transformed in front of them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. You know what's going on? For us, we are wow, that's kind of crazy. But for the first century Jew, for the person who's reading this, you know what they're automatically going back to? They're going back to 2 very specific situations and stories. They're going back to when the glory of the Lord came down on the mountain of God, down in Horeb with Moses. And when he comes and he dazzling white and brilliant lightning. And then when Moses comes, he ascends the mountain to receive the law. When he receives the law, something happens to Moses. Moses actually requests to see the glory of the Lord. You guys know this story, right? As the Lord says, I can't show you my full glory because if I show you my full glory, you will die. But what I'll do is there's this spot in the mountain, this cleft in the mountain. If you go there and if you hide your face, I'll give you just a glimpse of who I am. And in that moment, Moses transforms. And when he comes down the mountain, the Israelites are like, man, dude, I need some sunglasses, you're so hot. I can't figure this out. They actually put a veil over Moses' face because it was too intimidating for the audience. So when Jesus transforms before Peter, James, and John, and this story starts to make its circulation through the church, they automatically are associating the glory of Moses that was found in Exodus chapter 20. Another thing that they're seeing is Exodus chapter 40, when the glory of God came down to the temple, and the temple was filled with the glory of God, and the Shekinah glory filled the entire temple, and it engulfed everybody. That's another story that they're thinking about. Another story is 1 Kings chapter 8, when the tabernacle gets transformed into a permanent location with the temple with King Solomon. And King Solomon is going to build this magnificent palace where the Ark of the Covenant is going to be placed, and the Shekinah glory is going to fill not just that temple and that area, but the entire land. And when they finally get everything set, the glory comes. It's brilliant white. So for the original audience, they're automatically associating these things. And I think it's important for us to see this too. This is in the Greek, this word only shows up a couple of times, and it's called metamorpho. And we get the word metamorphosis out of that. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Do not be conformed any longer to the pattern of this world, but rather be, what's the word? Transformed. Be metamorphosed. How? By the renewing of your mind. How do we do that? Well, it's what you think about. Well, what do you think about? Well, it's what you read. It's what you're listening to. So this Romans 12:2, this transfiguration, Matthew 7 are connected. And you probably are also associating Colossians chapter 3, verse 1. Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. See, the Lord's revealed glory is happening in this moment, which is another kind of interesting thing, because in Israel, they would have this one special day a year, just one special day a year. And in faith, in the Western world, we have one special day a year too. You know what that special day is, right? It's Easter, right? Everyone comes to church for Easter to get their little dose of Jesus, which just kind of irritates the heck out of me. That's why I like all the other 52 or 51 weeks of the year. I love that people are coming, but it seems like some social obligation that I just don't quite understand. It's like, man, show up and be faithful more often. But if they're going to come, they're going to get the gospel on Easter. The Easter for the Israelite was the Day of Atonement. It's the day that no one missed, and it was one time a year where, you ready for this? A man could enter the temple, the Holy of Holies, just one day a year. And this man, he was the high priest of Israel. And usually he would walk around in all of his glory. He would have this beautiful ephod, this beautiful dress, like this beautiful robe, and he would walk around. And what he was symbolizing with his outer garment is how beautiful the temple looked, how beautiful the tabernacle was inside. This is how wonderful and glorious God is. In fact, they would put little gems on his ephod and on his breastplate, because when the sun would hit these specific gems, which represented Israel, it would have this magnificent glow to it. This was the high priest. And he did that 364 days a year, but one day a year, he was required to take all of that glory off. All of the glory off. And he had to strip down to very basic concepts, to like his linen ephod, his underwear, and he would go into the presence of God. You know what's interesting about this story about the transfiguration? Jesus does not come in glory. He comes in basic form. Isaiah 53. He was plain to look at. He was ordinary. When you see him, you're like, that's the Messiah? That's the anointed? Yeah, he's doing some really cool things, but are you serious? This was the one day in his ministry where he took his plain garb off and went into the tabernacle to make atonement for you and for me. What he was doing on the heels of the confession was broadcasting not just to these inner three, but also to the entire known spiritual realm. I am here. If you are wondering if I am who I said I am, look no further. He broadcasted to the spiritual realm that he was in his full glory. And Peter, James, and John connect all of these dots. Here's the crazy thing. Peter, James, and John, and the rest of the 9 have been following Jesus for 2.5 years. And this is when, boom, solidification of who this guy is. Have you ever wondered, man, how much do I really know Jesus? Are you curious if you fully know who he is? Have you really seen his full glory? Have you really seen everything he has to offer? Or are you still in that 2.5-year period in your faith where you're still following and you're like, well, I think he is who he said he is, but all these stories and all these experiences and all these other things that other people are having, I don't quite get. Has he fully revealed himself to you? Here's another question. Have you asked him to? Have you asked him to? How serious are you in your intimacy with the Lord? How much did you desire him to be present in your life? How well do you know Jesus? How well do you really know Jesus? Verse 3, behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. Don't you wish that you could be like a fly on the wall? Okay, first, like who the heck are these Elijah and Moses thing? Like we know that, like stories from the Old Testament, we know that Elijah was this stud of a prophet. He was the first of the prophets really kind of be known after Samuel, and he was this weird wanderer. And then there's Moses, and we've had a whole sermon series on Moses, and we kind of know who Moses is. But you know what Moses and Elijah kind of represent? They represent biblically the law and the prophets. Moses brings the law. He brings the expectations. Here's what the responsibility, here's what the relationship looks like. And the prophets is, here's what God expects, and here's how to live out that law. So law and prophets is part of why Elijah and Moses are probably brought here. But here's another fascinating thing. They both have very interesting endings in their life. Like in Jude chapter 1, which is funny because there's no other chapters, but Jude chapter 1 nonetheless, right, says that there was this fight, this dispute, this debate over Moses' body when he dies. And it says that when the archangel Michael was disputing over the body of Moses with Lucifer, he said to Lucifer, "The Lord rebuke you." He didn't bring in a slanderous accusation against the enemy, which really says something to us. Just side note, maybe we shouldn't be so slanderous against our enemy. Maybe we should just let the Lord deal with him and just kind of move on. Regardless, there's this weird debate over Moses' body, and you kind of wonder, like, why does that matter? What would it matter if, like, the enemy, if darkness had Moses' body? Imagine what would happen if darkness could resurrect Moses. How much deception could happen for the Israelite people? So that's part of why I think the body mattered so much. But sidebar, something weird happens to his body. You know what happens to Elijah, right? In 1 Kings chapter 2, Elijah is taken up in a whirlwind. He doesn't even experience death. Both of them have this weird, mysterious ending. But here's the more fascinating aspect about Moses and Elijah. They both desired to see God's glory. Specifically, in Exodus chapter 33, Moses is saying to the Lord, "Show me your Shekinah. I want to see you fully, Lord." And you know what happened to Elijah? Elijah, stud of a prophet, has very responsible for like helping correct Israel because they had all followed after another god by the name of Baal. And after that big epic battle, what happens is Jezebel decides who's the queen of North Israel. She decides there's open season on every prophet, and especially Elijah. He's the most wanted prophet in all of Israel, and I want him dead. So Elijah takes off and he runs to Horeb. And when he runs to Horeb after 40 days, the Lord says to or Elijah twice, "Why are you here? Why are you here?" And Elijah says, "I'm tired." Yeah, I get that. He said, they want me dead. I'm the last remaining prophet. No one else is with me. I don't know where else to go, God. I just want to see you. It says that God showed up in a gentle whisper. Both of these men desired to see the glory of God. And you know what's interesting? Both of them see it. On earth, they both get to see it. They both see it at this mountain of transfiguration. So they're talking to Jesus. But did you see like they're talking to him? Like, wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall here and wonder, what are they talking about? What do you think they're talking about? Luke actually gives us that insight. If you'll turn to Luke chapter 9, I want to show you what Luke says they're talking about here. Okay? Luke chapter 9, we're going to look at verse 28. And by the way, Mark chapter 9 also records this transfiguration. Luke chapter 9, verse 28. Now, about 8 days after these things had taken place, he took with him Peter, John, and James up the mountain to pray. And as he was praying, the appearance of his face altered. The clothing became dazzling white. And behold, two men were talking with him, Moses and Elijah, who appeared in glory and spoke of his, ready, here it is, his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. That's what they're talking about. Moses and Elijah come, and they're asking Jesus, like, are you ready to come home? And are you ready? Are you ready to leave? You're so close. You're so close. Are you ready? Now, admittedly, if I had a chance to have a conversation with Jesus, I would probably selfishly turn the conversation to me. And I don't like that about myself. I would probably naturally say, hey, Jesus, there's this thing going on in my life. Could you kind of maybe talk to that? When you interact with the Lord, when you pray, when you spend time with him, who's the conversation more about? Is it more about him? Or is it more about you? You see what's going on with Elijah and Moses? They're making it about him. Now, Peter, verse 32, this is when the story gets really funny. Like, Peter's personality really starts to shine here, I think, a little bit. Hey! Peter and those, verse 32, who are with him were heavy asleep. Again, this kind of is an early foreshadowing of the fact that when Jesus is going to take them to the Garden of Gethsemane, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. So Peter and James and John, they're kind of like, oh, man, something's happening. They wake up and they look and they see these two guys standing there. Somehow they recognize Elijah and Moses. And the men were parting from there. And Peter says to Jesus, Master, it's good that you are here, that we're here. Wow, this is fantastic. Look at the next part. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. Not knowing what he said. Now here, let me share with you what's going on. Like, this is a very natural response. Again, think about first century Jewish person interacting with this story. They automatically are associating Moses. They're automatically associating Solomon, the temple, and they're thinking the Shekinah glory is finally here. They know that he is the Christ. They believe he is the Christ, but this is evidence that he's the Christ. But the other more fascinating thing in this storyline is where we're at on the calendar. See, we're about to celebrate the Feast of Booths, if you're a Jew. And the Feast of Booths is the time where you commemorate the time of wandering that the Jewish people had to go through for purification. And I think what Peter is naturally thinking is, hey, we're so close to this Feast of Tabernacles, and you have made your dwelling among men. Finally, the glory of God, the Shekinah glory is here, and it's going to rest forever on you. Let's just stay in this moment forever. But he didn't really know what he was talking about. Man, there are so many times that happens in my world too, where I think I've accurately diagnosed what's about to happen or what should happen or what is happening, only to find out that I was way off. Anyone else? So what do you do? What do you say when you don't really know what to say? Are you the type of person that has to, like, you're uncomfortable in the silence and you just have to fill the air with something stupid? You know, how many of you have ever heard it's better to be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt? Anyone know that one? Okay, where's that in the Bible? Does anyone know? That's it. It's not. Yep, that's right. It's Mark Twain. Possibly Abraham Lincoln are quoted for that. But there is kind of a close parallel to this, which is found in the Proverbs, and that's probably where the inspiration for Mark Twain or Abraham Lincoln came. And it's Proverbs 17:28. Even a fool who keeps silent is thought wise. And in this moment, it's probably best for Peter just to have kept his mouth shut. But it serves as a good application for us. And here's what's really interesting. Like, Matthew records this. Luke records this, but, Mark and Luke are the only ones that record this, but Matthew doesn't. Matthew does not shame Peter or credit Peter for saying this, which is kind of interesting, just that dynamic with Matthew and Peter. But every gospel writer says the very next thing. If you look at it, verse 34, as he was saying these things, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were afraid to enter the cloud. A voice came out of the cloud saying, "This is my son, this is my beloved, this is my chosen, with whom I'm well pleased." To listen to him. This is one of 3 times where a voice from heaven is going to say something in Jesus' ministry. One of 3 times that a voice from heaven says something about Jesus' ministry. In Hebrews chapter 1, 1 through 3, the author of Hebrews begins with, "In former days, prophets have told us, and Moses has told us, but the Lord, the Son, has spoken." And I think what's happening here is it's not just listen to the law, it's not listen to the prophets, it's not listen to Elijah, it's not listen to Moses, it's listen to the Father. Listen to the Father's voice. I think what we're supposed to do is possibly think about the garden. As long as Adam and Eve were listening to the Lord's voice, everything was fine. But the second that they started listening to someone else, everything got messed up. And it produces a natural question for us. Who am I listening to? Who am I listening to? Man, there's a lot of voices in this world, church. There's a lot of voices that culture is shouting. But there's only one voice that really matters. And I think if you want to know the answer to this question on which voice you're listening to, all you have to do is look at the fruit in your life. That's all you have to do. Look at the fruit. Look at the evidence of how your life is or what's being produced in your life. Because when you find the fruit in your life, what you're going to see is the fruit in your mouth, what you're consuming. And when you follow that from what are you eating, what are you consuming, what are you spouting, you're gonna naturally see you're feeding yourself, what's in your hand, what fruit is in your hand. And the fruit in your hand is going to reflect the tree that you've reached for. And the tree that you've reached for will indicate the voice that you're listening to. So the question for, I think, all of us, and specifically me right now in this moment, is like, what's the voice that I'm listening to? Do not be transformed, or do not be conformed by the pattern of this world. Rather be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Transfiguration. So where do we go from here? Like, what do we do because of what we've talked about? First, it's this. The first thing I want to do, based on what I'm seeing in this passage, in this story, is trust Jesus. And that's a pretty specific and condensed thing, but I think what that really is kind of helping me remember is that he has his reasons. He is God, I am not. That whatever it is that he's given me to do, whatever my assignment is in this world, trust him. Whether I'm part of the 5,000, whether I'm part of the 500, whether I'm part of the 70, whether I'm not, whether I'm just somebody who's a part of the kingdom, trust him. He is God. I am not. Another thing I want to do because of what we've talked about is make conversations about him. Whether that's conversations I'm having with other people or my prayer life, whatever it is, I want to turn every conversation about him, not about me or circumstances or other situations that are not eternal. I want to think about him. The third thing I want to do is I want to look for his glory. Just like Elijah and just like Moses did, I want to try to find his glory in the mundane, in the normal situations, in everyday circumstance. Like, where is he showing himself off? And then another action step that I want to try to employ this week is I want to listen for his voice. In all of the noise of this world, I've got to try to find his voice. That's what I've got to do. Because there's too many voices to listen to. And when I get confused and I start listening to the world, I know I'm going to start producing fruit that's worldly. Last thing I want to do is I want to expect change to happen. Because you cannot come to Jesus, you cannot hear his voice, you cannot see his glory without having something transformed in your life. I want to expect change. Change in me, change in my home, change in my marriage, change in my family, change in my church, change in my community. Expect change. I want to remind you of something that Paul would actually say in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, and this is what he says. He's writing to a people, and he says, "So all of us who have held the veil or had the veil removed can see and reflect the glory of God." You know what Paul's saying here? If you know Jesus, in some way you're going to be reflecting Jesus. And the Lord, who is Spirit, makes us more and more like him as we are, that's another word, metamorphosed, transformed, as we are changed. What are we being changed into? A glorious image. You've heard many times before, my goal is to be more like Jesus today than I was yesterday. I hope that's your goal too. But that's a hard process. That's sanctification. That means honest evaluation. That means saying, Lord, take the ugly that's in my life, take the world that's in my life and burn it out. Cut it out. Help me to be transformed into your ever glorious presence. Not because I'm God, you are. But I want others to see who you are. I don't know what your application is. But I'd like to wrestle with you about it. I'd like to share that with you. I'd like to share those stories. It's only when you're ready. Father, I thank you so much for this day. Thank you for being God. Thank you for changing my life. Lord, keep changing us. I pray that you'd be with those who are wrestling with this. Give them the courage, Lord, that they need to see your glory again. In Christ's name, amen. I want you guys to stand and let's sing.
Everybody, please have a seat. Just have a few announcements for you. There is some stuff going on. If you guys don't know, this Saturday, Steve already kind of mentioned it earlier, we have Live Nativity. The Live Nativity event is this Saturday, the 13th. It's from 5:30 to 8. But there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen before that date. So we have things we need to get done today. If you are able to, please stay after church and help us to build the scene, the stable scenes. We have some other work to do. We have pizza. Is that correct, Patrick? So we have food available, so please stay here if you are able. This week also on Wednesday, there's another build. So on Wednesday night for Wednesday night classes, the adult classes and the youth group, is that correct? Youth group's going to help out with building the rest of the stuff that didn't get done today. And then Saturday, we have the rest of the build starting at 8 o'clock. But there's something else on Saturday, too, on the 13th. There's men's breakfast. So if you are a man, you want to have a fellowship and some really good food, 7 o'clock, we have men's breakfast. Then right after that, we have the rest of the build for the Live Nativity. Also, coming up on December 24th, if you guys knew this, Christmas is right around the corner. So on Christmas Eve, we have a Christmas Eve service right here, starting at 5:30. We changed the time, so it's at 5:30 Christmas Eve, and it's called... Oh my goodness, sorry. Hope in a Manger. I saw that up there today. Hope in a Manger. That's our Christmas Eve service. Start at 5:30. All right, we got men's breakfast. We got Live Nativity. Hi, Gary. We have another thing we need to talk about?
I think so.
Are you on? You want to borrow this?
Might as well. Notice there's a reoccurring theme, food. It seems like that's a part of everything, isn't it? Kind of. That's how you build the kingdom, build the temple anyway. Our elders, we want to bring to your attention, there have been 3 names brought forward as possible becoming elders as shepherd the flock and serving together. Mike Raines, Jordan Buell, and Ron Melvin. So those names are names you should be praying about. If it's in the newsletter, if you don't read the Reveille that Grace puts out every week or month, she puts a lot of information in there. A lot of information. There's a good article written by somebody about sabbatical. That's in there too. I don't know. I read it. Not too bad. But there's a lot of things to be praying over and looking to God to give us wisdom and direction with. And so we want you to be praying about those men. If there is some biblical reason that you believe one of those men should not become a shepherd with the Rising Sun family, you need to bring that to the elders. But continue to pray, lift them up, lift up all your elders, your leaders, and be good sheep as you come along with us. Let's go to the Lord in prayer and close out the service. Your glory, God, is amazing. Christ's willingness to confine himself in a body of flesh and blood, going from eternal glory and all the glory of the heavens into a human body, just so he could die, that we might be forgiven and able to spend eternity with you, is amazing beyond comprehension. Help us to speak with you every day, to commune with you, to know you intimately. Fill and saturate our hearts and our minds with your presence through your word that became flesh among us, that we might walk faithfully with you in every day of life that you entrust to us. Help us to fulfill your purpose in our creation as we love and serve you, as we serve together as your family on this earth and reach out to the lost, that we might be faithful to our calling and that we might draw everybody unto you, that every knee will bow and every tongue will confess before your return, that we might all spend eternity with you. Go with us this week. May we see through your eyes the opportunities you give us to speak your truth to the hearts and lives of those we touch. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.